So welcome to the Insight for Business podcast. This is our first ever episode, and I would like to welcome Mark Webb, the Managing Director of eFactor Group.
Hi Matthew, all right?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Good.
Thanks again for coming along. Like I say, the first ever episode, it's very exciting for us at Insight for Business. So we're here today at the Enterprise Village, and I can see there's construction work being completed on site as you continue to grow. Can you tell us how this journey started?
What, of eFactor?
eFactor, yes, and
Goodness me.
the Enterprise Village.
Well, look, in a nutshell, eFactor goes back to 2007, 2008, and it was really born out of a dissatisfaction, I suppose, as many good things are. You see some kind of gap in the market, and the gap that I identified was that business support that was being provided to local small businesses was really being provided by what was then Business Link, and I was on the receiving end of that, and it was really very prescriptive. It had nothing to do with enterprise or being entrepreneurial. Literally, there was somebody would come and see you with a list of things to say, well, these are the things that we can help you with. Which one do you want? And if the answer is, well, A, I don't know, and B, none of those, I'm pretty sure, then we reached a stalemate. There wasn't enough support, when actually entrepreneurs, people who are in business, just need someone to sit down and listen to what they're facing. Because look, lots of businesses face the same thing, but they all feel different to every individual business. So you need to go in with a blank sheet of paper. So eFactor, taking that on that premise, decided, well, we're going to do it differently. We're going to go in from the beginning, understanding that people deal with people, not lists of paper and not policies and such things. And to get it funded, we went into this competitive bidding process in London for a program called LEGI. Some people might remember it. Yeah, it's Local Enterprise Growth Initiative. They love acronyms, really. But it was really good because it was competitive across the country. Yeah. And this area, I felt, really needed some support for the entrepreneurs that I could see existed, but weren't getting the support that they needed. So I went to see a bid that this area was putting together, and it was a bit rubbish. And so I said I thought it was rubbish, and they said, well, do you think you can do any better? Oh, yes. And that was the opportunity. So I pulled together a bid, spoke to a lot of business people. It was a real collaborative effort, and we won money. And the basis of our bid was, and this is coming to the village, the basis of our bid was, if we can take capital and build something, we'll turn it into revenue ad infinitum.
Sustainability.
That's all
right there.
That's absolutely what it is. And I think there were about 11. Maybe 11 or 12 leggy programs across the country.
Were they run by local councils?
All run by local councils. Yeah. Ask me how many of them exist now.
How many of them exist now, Mark?
None.
Wow.
Just ours. Just eFactor.
But you've told me that story before, and it stands out because it's run by business. You were collaborative in that you went out to the market and asked, what do you need, what do you want? And I think it speaks for itself that this is the only one standing.
It really does. And the idea of coming to the Enterprise Village, that we should build something like this and turn it into revenue, and the revenue we get from this, all of it goes into supporting local businesses. And that will never change. Unless we burn this place down, that will never change.
Superb.
Yeah.
Fantastic story, thank you. Was it right that it was North East Links Council who gave you the opportunity then?
That's right.
I've got to say fair play to North East Links Council.
Yeah, you're quite right. I should mention that, because they were, once we'd gone out and won the bid. I remember going down to London and to do a presentation to the chairman of Orange there, and I was there with the council. So this was a real partnership, and presented to them. And they remarked then that this was, because it was private sector led, that this was different. This felt different, and which was. Did
you have that feedback there and then?
Absolutely, without doubt. They were saying, in fact, they said, how long is your group, Mark, going to be involved with this then? Or are you just going to, I think they were worried that it would just be handed back over to the council. So when we said, no, this is an ambition, this is a plan for an organisation, I think that was part of the thing that helped us. But the council could have said at the end of that, right, well, this is our money, because it has to be passported through a council. So we'll do this, and you thanks for the input, and we'll take it from here. But they didn't. They true to their word. They worked with us in an innovative way. eFactor as a social enterprise, a not-for-private profit organisation, they passported the money on contract over to us to let us run it in that way. I mean, they sit on our board and they do, they, of course, and we want them to. But basically, the business of running local enterprise growth was run by eFactor Limited, which is a private company run by business people. That's the difference.
And I wonder, at the start of all this with Leggy, has there been any reflection on what this is what we should do in business? When we have successes or failures, we should look at what made the failure a failure and what made the success a success, so that we can repeat what went well and work on what went bad.
In eFactor?
So, well, not on eFactor. So there were 11 or 12 councils that are not still running. Yet eFactor is. So what has that partnership who handed out the funding learned from the success of eFactor? And is that going to be replicated? I wonder. That's one of the questions that comes to me.
That's absolutely right. It's the right thing to say, because the partnership who formed it, I mean, this was a different government. This was back in 2000.
Yeah, true. So that's tough in itself.
People turn round and the ministers turn round and whatnot. But the premise, which I keep on any platform that will have me, that I keep saying, is the success that was here, that came out of Leggy, is immensely repeatable across the country. All it takes is for somebody to say, this is, and buildings converted into revenue is an easy thing for councils to do. They've got lots of buildings.
Yes, they have.
Put a bit of capital money into converting it into places like this, and the other units and business like the Hive and things that we've got around the area, and turn those into revenue. And if you're a council who's got the courage to do that and to give it to an organisation like ours, I don't want it, by the way, but I mean, create another one, then you will have what we've got here. Instead, what happened in other areas is that councils created departments, they employed people in the council to run Leggy, and all funded by Leggy. So when Leggy ran out,
when the pot dried up,
that was done. And we're still running. The buildings that we're building here are all our own money. We're not getting funding to carry on building buildings.
And again, I recall when he first told me that background, that I believe that they were subsidising smaller businesses, perhaps, to say here's a reduced rent, for instance, rather than looking at a model of helping out in other ways with other support. But real life is that you've got rent to pay and bills to pay. No good if you've got a big reduction for the first sort of 12 months, and then you've got that hike up that comes after it. Can be quite a shock.
It's a real false economy to do that. You can't create and help businesses run by cutting away the real costs that they're going to have to face. You set up whole ways of running a business based on that reduced cost, and so it does come as a surprise. As much as you might have it written down that in 3 years you're going to be paying market rate, when you're running a business,
support with the business growth at the front end. It would be the way I'd look at it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Super. So fantastic story there, with how eFactor started, and as I said, it continues to grow. We see that that there are more units being completed. When are they set to be ready?
First tenant is moving in on November the 1st, so it's very soon. And the second tenant, I think, in December the 1st, because of and then there's another one. So from November the 1st, there'll be people moving in.
Super. Yeah. And how much extra capacity has that put into the village?
Well, that's given us 7 more units down there, light industrial units, and they certainly are the most popular type of business accommodation. I call them light industrial units, but they're an office with industrial part, light industrial part behind it, and a mezzanine floor that you can use for either more offices or storage. But we call this the enterprise village, and quite rightly, because you think of industrial units and you might think, well, that's just awful. lots of grease and noise and whatnot. But if you look around the village, the selection of people that we've got here, we've got a fashion designer, we've got jewellery makers, cheerleader training companies.
Wow, really?
There's just every IT companies all using these so-called industrial units with really innovative ways. It's big space in there. It's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, industrial unit perhaps doesn't do justice to the type of client that you have on site. Maybe we can come up with something a little more.
I think that's right. Somebody said, "Well, yes, it really is a village," and one of my tenants says, "Does that make us the village people?" Well, I don't think we need to go that far. But
yeah, the enterprise village. It does. Yeah, enterprise is the word, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
definitely.
Very good. Just to backtrack a little, when we talked about Leggy and how well eFactor Group has done with that money, with that funding, it's the one that's still standing, and the blueprint. It is a blueprint for success.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just feel that there needs to be, for me, a bit of a closed loop there to go back to some of these people who were involved with that and shining a light on just how well eFactor Group have done and the team that you put together. So perhaps that's something I can get some. Maybe you can give me some connections to who were involved, and I can.
I'd be delighted to if they're still around. I know that, as I say, it was a good 12 years ago now, or even longer, 13 years ago now. The people in government that were involved, at least, were doing that. But there's no reason. It can be quite a battle from eFactor's point of view. And let me just put this theory to you. I think that business support generally in this country focuses, and they talk about business, and the focus is generally on larger organisations.
Yep.
You see it in headlines of newspapers, and that's quite right. They're big job creators, and they're easy to talk to because they're big and they represent big sectors. But then they take the same approach to when they're talking about small businesses. So they have this lovely phrase, SMEs, small to medium enterprises. And that's just a way of saying, well, they're all very different. So let's just put them all into one category so we can talk about them in one category. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, from 1-2 employees up to 250 employees, from
Precisely.
$1 million or a few 100,000 turnover to 40 million turnover.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense, does it?
How can the support you want to give to an entrepreneur who's just started off in a photography business or running a tattoo parlour or something along those lines, how can you treat them or think that their requirements are the same as an engineering firm that's been around for 70 years and employs 100 people? It's not the same, and they might have similar, but they're not the same, and they need individual
that's
attention.
just another reason, perhaps, that the eFactor Group has done so well, because it's catered to that market. It's catered to that market and helped those small businesses develop.
It really has, and it's an important theory that we're putting into practice, because like any other town in the UK. North East Lincolnshire's reliance on small to medium enterprises, and mainly the small side of that, or even the micro side of that, the reliance on that is staggering. When you consider, I think it's now 90% of adults employed in North East Lincolnshire are employed by those small to medium enterprises. So, of course you must help them. We are all facing challenges, not just large sectors that you hear about on the news. That photographer, that hairdresser, that butcher, they're facing challenges just like Amazon they're not really facing challenges, are they? But some of the larger firms are facing. They're facing them just the same. The difference is, Matthew, that the people that we're talking to are the people that got up one morning and said, right, I'm going to remortgage my house and start this business, and I'm going to put everything into it. It's that person, that very person that is facing the challenges that we reach out to support, because they employ 5-10 people, and they worry every night about how they're going to keep those jobs going. And those are the people that's our audience.
That you're continuing to support, yes.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you. Of course, eFactor's done so well as we've spoken about. A great success story. A couple of questions I wanted to ask from that was, you didn't obviously do that just just on your own.
No.
Maybe part of that vision was yours, but then it was the collaborative approach from the start, and obviously a team to build it. So I wonder whether you could perhaps develop on how the vision and strategy team came together and has built from then, and how it continues to develop.
Okay, I think you're right to say eFactor, and I hope it hasn't come across as if it was all
No,
because it really wasn't. There's no doubt. From the word go, collaboration first with the local authority and then with the team that we built up around it was really important. We were supported by the enterprise agency that was here. And very active at the time, and also by the Grimsby Institute, who are also very interested and play a big part in the future economy of this area, and by a lot of other private sector organisations. It was collaboration from the beginning, and continued to be there as we developed a team of people. And the most important thing I can say about the team at eFactor, and I suppose it's about the attitude and the culture that we build up around here, is that you cannot go in to any one of our customers, doesn't matter who it is, with any assumptions whatsoever. You go in with the respect that that person, whether they've just had an idea or they've been going for 100 years, has got something to teach you. And if we follow that premise, if all of our advisors follow that premise and stop thinking that we're experts in anything other than finding help and solutions for people who are running businesses, then you learn every single day about what it takes to be able to support businesses. I'll learn something today that will help a business that I meet maybe in 6 months' time, because I've learned it from somebody else who I'm trying to support for a different thing. And that's how it works. That's why you should always go in with a blank sheet of paper rather than that list.
Yeah, take the preconceptions
without a doubt. And the other part of it is, apart from the fact that we're run by business people, is that we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are a business. We're a limited company. We need, not for profit doesn't mean not for any profit at all. It means go out and get as much profit as you can in order to cycle it back in.
Reinvest it,
I don't have shareholders except my customers. They're the ones who will notice if I don't invest back in them. And they're the ones that will cry foul, and quite right, they should do.
And another strength of the team that you put in place is that you've retained that team. You're not turning over staff. That adds a strength in and of itself, doesn't it? Because you're not losing experience and the wealth of knowledge and experience within the local market that's been gained through that support over years and years is retained.
Without a doubt, and that's enough for any company to consider. If any organisation believes that retaining their staff is a thing you do on the side, or just pay them enough money, or you'll get
absolutely.
You lose the point about the value. I mean, my team are just. I mean, you're right. I've had them. It feels like they were there at the birth of the company, but they buy into the values of the company. They believe in what they do. They feel the company. I don't pay them top dollar. They'd be the first ones to tell me that, and so there's no doubt. But I don't. It's not that I don't need to. Of course, I would if I could. But we get the right balance. But they love the company, and as long as I continue to love the company as much as they do and treat them with respect that we're all a team, then that's what's more important.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. You cannot beat that approach. Money goes so far as a hygiene factor. It gives someone a small lift for a very short period of time. But if you feel invested in the organisation, the enterprise that you're part of, because you feel part of it, you get far much more out from those people.
You're right, Matthew.
And it's an enjoyable place. It's an enjoyable place to be. It's an enjoyable part of your life. Work is a massive part of our life, isn't it?
It's huge. And if you don't enjoy it, then
it's tough, isn't it?
Well, I remember meeting a person back when I worked at corporates, and I met a person I hadn't seen for a while, and at a conference, as you often do, and we had a drink, and it was the 80s. We had drinks at conferences. We had conferences. And we sat down in the bar and said, I said to him, "How are you doing?" And he said, I hate, I'm still there, and I really don't. And he went on and on and on, loads about how miserable, and his boss didn't understand him, and she thought he was rubbish, and he wasn't the right person for the job, and he wasn't enjoying it. And he went on and on. And in the end, I said to him, if you hate it so much, why don't you just leave? And he said to me, I've only got 15 more years to go.
Only got 15 years to go.
If you ever find yourself in that position,
No,
really, that is what you get if you don't invest in value and support your staff. You get that attitude.
That attitude, and what work output are you getting from that as well? What work output? Everybody can clearly see that that's not a good position to be in. And it comes from not having engaged staff, engaged employees who feel part of the organisation, part of the message.
Not valuing them. What people seem to... I have people that sometimes come into our offices and talk to Courtney, who you'll have met at reception, who's a very capable young lady, also buys in totally into the ethos of the company, and they dismiss her as if it was, and you think, well, why don't you understand that everyone in this company plays a part, and that if you upset Courtney, then you upset me or anybody else, because we're all that and we all buy into that. So everyone should just understand that they're all adults, we're all adults, we've all got a job to do, and we all should be valued in the role that we play in that team. People forget that, I think, sometimes.
Absolutely. An interesting story I heard that I won't be able to recall quite correctly, I'm sure, but the team ethos they have at NASA, I can't remember. Maybe it was Buzz Aldrin. Maybe it was one of the guys who actually set foot on the moon. But everybody at NASA felt part of that team. You asked. I think it was the guy who cleaned up, swept the floors. Was asked, "What do you do?" He said, "I put rockets on the moon. I put men on the moon." And that is what it means to be part of a team. Everybody has a part to play.
Couldn't put it better myself. That's absolutely right.
Thanks, Mark. Right. A few questions. So what has been the effect of COVID-19 for the Grimsby business community?
Wow, it has been many and varied, I've got to say. It's as much as we'd all like to, and I'm a very positive person, as you might have gathered, but it's a challenge to find a way to be totally positive about the situation that we're in at the moment. Particularly the hospitality and tourism, and they're really facing up to it at the moment. And Matthew, it's not so much of course it is a hell of a lot of the complete wipeout of their customer base, but it's also the uncertainty. Really not really knowing, is it going to change again next month or the month on? You hear that being played out at the moment on television because of the second wave. It's a real challenge for those businesses, It's had a big impact on the business community here. There are businesses that are yet to know whether they're going to survive after furloughing comes to an end, and depending on what policies come into place and whether that will support them. We don't really know. There's been a lot of kicking the can down the road with the loans that have been offered and the support, the financial support. I think it's had more of an impact than we're seeing now. I think we're going to see more of that probably in November. Some will hold out through December, but then end up, as we see often after Christmas, you get you have a downturn. But not to put there are some upsides here, and in our experience, and I think we have. Well, let me just give you some examples from the time that we went into lockdown. So from April, let's say through March, our interest, the people who came to see us about starting their own business, went from 12 a month, which we used to get on a regular basis, to 40.
Really?
And it hasn't
from
stopped.
April?
From the minute it all happened, people were coming. And now look, when somebody comes to us and says, I'm thinking about starting a business, we take them through some reality checks, some workshops and some things. And normally we lose about 50% of them after that. And that's a good duty for us to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that ratio is the same. So whereas we used to have 6, we've now got 20.
Wow.
I mean, that is
fantastic stats.
Well, it completely threw me. I have no idea what. I think there's some science behind it that I could point to, but I don't know. It just happens, and it continues.
And also, to look at some of the positive steps we can take. I myself have been talking to eFactor Group in the support we have with the Kickstarter employment scheme.
That's
And I
right.
believe at the last count, you'd had around about 150
Yeah,
smaller businesses that obviously you're able to put 30 plus together at a time.
Yeah, that's right. That's
And-
right. We've gone up to, I think, now 175 positions through around about 150 registered.
So
employees.
yeah, hoping that's a great positive going forward. And part of that is some of those companies perhaps that even started in April that are looking to come through and continue to grow.
Absolutely, isn't that a great sign? That this offer, I mean, it's a generous offer. You're paying 6 months' worth of salary and
Yes.
everything for a young person. But isn't that a great sign that local small businesses have said, I could do something with it. I could make my business grow or better if I just had the opportunity.
Yeah, do you know
to do
that's where I am. I know I need some help with Insight for Business. There's me and as managing director of a small business, you have every single job to do, and I could do with some help. But the thought of employing somebody part-time or even full-time, the immediate concern is the cost.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, if I know I'm at that point, if I'm getting some help to pay those wages,
Absolutely.
and if it's a young person as well, that's a great thing to be able to do. If I can get somebody in, I'm
It
really
benefits
looking.
everyone. It's a great scheme, really is, and the enthusiasm for it is excellent. So, let's hope.
Yeah, and it is about passing on some real skills and knowledge within
Absolutely.
that 6 months as well.
And in addition to that, just on the COVID thing, that we have found that there are three types of businesses now in this. There's one group who have completely they're just barely surviving, and that's probably through things like furlough. And rather sadly, it's not likely that they'll survive for much longer. They'll fight now, and we'll give them every bit of support that we can, but there is that group. Then there's a group at the other end of the scale who have pivoted right from the beginning and who are just, some who have launched in the middle of it, who are just absolutely flying. They've responded, they're doing things in a different way, and now they're making as much of a profit as they were pre-COVID, and just because of the new way of working, which is really interesting to see the creativity and the innovation of people to do that. But then there's a big chunk in the middle, that main group of people who are, they're battling and they're surviving and they've got a good chance to survive, but they're on thin ice. They need support, they need timely support, we need to ensure that we look after that community of business people. Because if we don't, and that group, that big group in the middle, fall away, then we have got economic problems. So we need to support that group of people. That's how it's impacting here.
Well highlighted, yeah, great point. What challenges does Grimsby face when it comes to business?
Well, the challenges that we have currently are so much more positive than they were before. So I'll put this in a nutshell because I recognise we have time. The business community were working in an area where people used to walk with their head down. Now, I've been here now for a good long time, and I've seen many reports that councils of the past and others have written about Grimsby. And you know what they always started with? They always started with, Grimsby is one of the most deprived areas in the UK. That would be the big opening gambit, mainly because they wanted people to give them money or something.
Yeah.
But you think that feeds in, doesn't it?
Yes,
That
it does.
feeds
Absolutely.
into the psyche of, and now because of, and now I haven't drunk the Kool-Aid about offshore wind being the panacea for everything, but I do recognise that ever since we talked about this area being the centre for offshore wind, for wind farms, suddenly we've got a difference. Suddenly people have lifted up their heads and are starting to think about other ways of being innovative in this area, thinking that this place has a future. And if you ever want to inspire entrepreneurs, and indeed people at school and colleges to make something of the area and like the area they live in, you give them one thing, and that's hope. If you give them hope about a future rather than being worried about the past, then suddenly people think of possibilities. And we have now got hope, and that's the challenge that we face. Can we take advantage of that?
And that's a great point, that giving people hope, you start that turnaround, you start that change mechanism of getting people to look at things differently, to appraise their their hopes and dreams differently, what they can do in business differently. Yeah, come to this area because it's deprived is not a great seller, is it? Come to this area because we have great opportunity.
Yeah,
is another.
Well, it's odd because those reports used to say this has some of the most deprived areas in the UK, and the other challenges we have is that talented people are leaving and not coming back. Well, I think you've just got the answer to the second thing that's happening in the first statement that you made. If that's what you think of your area to open up a report like that, then that's what's going to happen.
Not to labour the point, but since I started my business a couple of years ago now, or certainly through last year, networking in North Links, North East Links, my eyes have been opened just through the positivity from all the different stakeholders.
Yeah, loads.
Absolutely. So I see the positive message. And it is a great place to live,
it is.
Work, and do business.
I tell you, it really is. And you only have to walk into, not necessarily just the networks that we have at the Hive or any of the networks. It's amazing that people don't see that if you're working on your own, you're challenging yourself to set up a business or to run a business, or you're the owner of a small business that employs 10 people, the absolute tonic it is to walk into a room of people who have or are facing similar challenges to you, not to sell, not to swap business cards and hope you can get something out, but just to be able to talk to them and hear them.
And inspire each other.
Absolutely. Or just even cry on each other's shoulders. It doesn't matter. You want to. Everyone wants to feel they belong to something, don't you? And if you feel you belong to a positive, upcoming community of people who are all got each other's backs, hell, that's a good place to be, really.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.